Hey, Clemson family, the Tigers suffer another loss, this one 24-17 to NC State. And we're going to kind of take the temperature of the room a little bit, the mood of the program in this episode. I think you all know what at least part of that means.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Is it a hot temperature or cold temperature? Which one's good? Which one's bad? Because I don't know which one it is, but whatever it is, it's not good right now.
A lot of messages from players and the head coach himself. I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. This is season 2. Unfortunately, being backed into a corner of the least positive season of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast so far. We don't like it that way, but we do try to have fair reflection of what's going on, or as Dabo Swinney said today, fair criticism. You can catch all our episodes at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff, as well as our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. A lot of you chipped in, contributed, commented in the last episode on our YouTube channel. That is great. We love to see it. Even when we don't agree, we are glad to have you there. youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Get in there and get your 2 cents in and be heard by all our listeners. So let's get into it. A lot being made this week of Dabo Swinney's comments yesterday and then today, Tuesday, as we record this. Tyler, if you're out there, you have made quite an impact on the public perception of the program and the reactions from at least one man inside the program, that being head coach Dabo Swinney. And I guess we're seeing a little more insight into what's going on in his head. He has been very positive, Coach Swinney, that is, not Tyler, throughout this season. He has tried to stress the positive, how close this team is to winning every game. The score has reflected that, except for Duke, and I don't think the score of the Duke game, as we've said before, really reflected how close a game that was, as far as, many of the measures, and the fact that Clemson was better on a vast majority of the plays in that game. The mistakes have been costly, and they continue to be costly mistakes of a fundamental nature, things that should really have been avoided before the season began. They have not been fixed during the course of the season. That's frustrating. And I think what we hear out of Coach Swinney when he talks about the 1.5% of the fans out there, when he pushes back against the kind of question and the way that it was asked in the radio call-in show Monday night, sounds like frustration to me. It sounds like someone who has been trying to say, hey, we're close, trying to take up for his guys. And now taking up for his guys in the way that he did is getting a lot of attention. I don't think is necessarily fair. A lot of coaches who are regarded as greats, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, they'll take up for their team against, silly questions all the time. Suddenly when Dabo Swinney is no longer aw shucks and actually puts a little vim and vigor behind what is on his mind. Oh, well, that's not okay for him to do. It's only okay for those other guys.
I think it's okay. I do. I don't particularly agree with it, but I'm not in that position. It's not my job to lead that program. That's his job. I don't have a problem with him standing up for his program. I don't have a problem with him standing up for everything that he's accomplished at Clemson. I think he is right that there is a lack of appreciation right now for what they've accomplished, but I also think that's okay. I do. When you've set the bar where they've set it, and there was talk in the summer of winning championships, that wasn't coming from the outside.
15-0, you're on the clock. That was the
right.
quote. Yeah,
that's coming from the inside of the program. That's not coming from Tyler. That's coming from inside the program. I think it's okay for the fans to be upset, and it's okay for them to be frustrated, and it's okay for Tyler's question. I thought Tyler didn't deliver the question the right way. I thought it got personal. I thought it was a personal attack. And as I told you as we were preparing for the podcast today, if you ask a 2.5-minute question, you have an agenda. And I don't care what that agenda is. I don't care what the question is. It's a leading agenda question. And then Dabo had a leading agenda answer. And I think they're both okay. I just wish they wouldn't have been handled. It got personal. on both ends. They got personal with the question. They got personal with the answer. And then that takes away the substance. I think the substance of Tyler's question is correct, or parts of it are. What's going on with the staff? Right? I mean, Dabo has said we've done it before. He has. There's no doubt about that. And I trust the fact that he will get it back to that at some point. But Bill, that we is not this staff. There are a lot of guys on this staff who have not proven a whole lot. And now some of them have been part of it, but now they're in bigger roles, or they weren't there before. So I think that part of it's fair. Absolutely. I think that's fair. I think it's fair to evaluate the staff. You and I were talking about what we were going to do the podcast on, and then this happens. And one of the things I mentioned was grading the staff. I absolutely believe that's fair. They get paid a lot of money to do those jobs. There should be accountability. And there was accountability with Brandon Streeter last year. There was accountability with Kevin Steele. Right, exactly. There was accountability with Billy Napier, right? I mean, we've seen Dabo make those tough decisions. It feels like he might have to make some more with this staff if they're going to get back to what they've become. There's not a lot of experience on this staff in their current roles. And that, I think, is showing up in how this team is playing on Saturdays. Look, you know how I feel about this. If you lose close games and you turn the ball over and you're not good fundamentally, what does that lead to? Or what does that point to? In my mind, you've known that. I've said this forever. Coaching. If you do one of those three things, I think there's a coaching issue. Bill, they're doing all of them. And, again, we know about the turnovers. That's been well documented on this team. We know about the penalties. We know about the lack of tackling, how poorly they tackle. And we know how they can't win a game. I mean, look at it. They've lost 3 games that they probably should have won. All 3 of them.
Absolutely.
Florida State, Miami, and NC State. Should have, not could have, should. Should. And then the Duke game got away from them at the end. Like you said, the score is the score. When somebody says the game is closer than the score, well, to me, that makes my head hurt because the score is the score. But that game was close in the fourth quarter until it got out of control.
Yep. So
they're 4 losses. And you can roll your eyes at him all you want to when he says we're a couple of plays away from being 8-0. It sounds very Tommy Bowden-ish.
But it's a fact at the same time.
It's an absolute fact this year. It absolutely. Tommy Bowden would say that when he didn't have the equity built up. Dabo's got the equity to say those kinds of things because he knows what it takes to get there. And I absolutely think he will get it back. These people that are saying Clemson's done, Clemson's never going to win again, the dynasty is done. They were never a dynasty anyway. I mean, Alabama's the dynasty. There was no Clemson dynasty. There's a pretty damn good run, hell of a run that unlike many teams have ever done in the history of college football. I think they will win another national title at some point with him as the head coach. Why do I believe that? Because I've seen him do it. I believe in things that I can see or that I've seen done, and I've seen him do it, and I think he'll do it again. But you have to acknowledge there are issues in this program that have to be addressed. And I don't know which one's worse. You talk about the room, the temperature of the room. My big question for the temperature of the room is, where are they missing most? Is it recruiting, evaluation, the recruiting evaluation part or the player development part. And I'm not sure which one it is. Because, I mean, my goodness, it's obvious that the talent has taken a step back. I mean, you can't deny that across the board. Where are they better talent wise now than they were 4 years ago? What position?
Right.
I can't name one. I mean, you can't say quarterback, can't say running back. I mean, those two guys were Travis and Trevor were first round picks, right? You can't say offensive line. The offensive line is as bad as it's been. I thought it was going to be better this year. It's terrible. The wide receivers aren't as good. The tight end isn't as good, although I think Briningstone's pretty darn good. The defensive front's not good. The line, I mean, not as good. It's good. It's not great. The linebackers aren't as good, and the DBs aren't as good. So I mean, from where they were when they last won a championship, and that was a all-time historic team. Is there one position where they're better now than they were then? And I don't. And the answer is clearly no.
Yeah.
But is that recruiting or is that development?
Yeah.
We don't know. We're not in the room, right?
Well, and how much of that is what's those guys' mentality? You know, who's the dog? You know, who are the dogs in that room? Who are the junkyard dogs that, you know, the Ben Boulware type, the Christian Wilkins type,
Wilkins, yep.
You know, teddy bear off the field, you know, go get after it on the field. You know, where is that mentality? We seem to think Jeremiah Trotter may have it. Some reports that he had a lot to say in the locker room after the Miami game. Typically, you don't hear those reports. If it's rah, rah, you're better than this, I love you all, you know, just a couple fluke plays that we've been hearing outwardly. So you have to think that there's some attempt to impart a sense of urgency and attempt to get guys to play to their full potential and to show on Saturdays perhaps what they show on the practice field if what we hear from Dabo Swinney in that regard is true and the players feel the same way about it. The other player we talked about is Walker Parks, how last week in last week's episode, we discussed his quotes about maybe some guys are overthinking some things. Maybe guys need to drill it in better during practice so that they can trust what they had on the practice field and take it out onto the game field and into those, you know, one-on-ones, hand-to-hand, you know, duking it out for the sake of the game, you know, and something is missing and the players are seeing something that is missing, that there's a broken link between Monday through Friday and then what they see on Saturday. We don't know what the assistants are thinking because they only speak once a month. That's going to be very interesting to me, I think, to hear what Garrett Riley and what Wes Goodwin have to say when they do have their monthly coordinator access with the media. How is that going to fit in, or what is that going to add to the picture to kind of assemble it all and bring it all together? You know, we can't hang all of our assumptions or what we want to infer about this program right now just from Dabo Swinney saying we're close, it's fluke plays, we're close, it's fluke plays. Well, they're not flukes when they happen again and again in the same way, and they're all rooted in fundamentals. That's just a team problem. But I get the larger point. Hey, we're close. It's one or two plays that are doing us in this game, fourth game. All of a sudden now it's a little more energetic, shall we say, a little more coming out toward the fan base. Well, you know, when all we hear is how great things are and then the finished product is not nearly as great, there's going to be frustration among the fans, just like there's surely frustration among the coaching staff, among the players throughout that facility, right? So we're kind of seeing this clash of frustrations from different sides coming at one another, and it ends up coming to a head on a public radio call-in show, and then Dabo Swinney again today kind of doubling down and saying, hey, you know, this is who I am, this is how I see it, this is what I think of the questions and of what we're hearing from certain fans. Also very flatly saying, hey, there's fair criticism to be had as well, and that's fine, and he doesn't have a problem with it. To your point, Daniel, the way these things are brought up does matter, and I hope that we've been presenting enough context. I mean, that's always been your goal and mine, right? You know, your motto of no hot takes on this show. Like
No
we're
hot
not out,
takes.
yeah, we're not out to do that. We're not out to be part of that crowd or the national guys who are just, skimming the surface and becoming poorly informed and then leaping on things in a way that really isn't genuine to the situation that's happening in Clemson, South Carolina, because they don't go there often enough, because they don't actually read the in-depth coverage from local guys like Chapel Fowler and John Blau and Larry Williams and on, David Hood. There are so many we can mention that do such a great job on that beat. But what you get is a very surface dwelling, response to what outsiders see on the inside. And we're trying to sort of bridge that gap on this show here a little bit. When we say, hey, Cade Klubnik's not getting the job done, we're not saying he'll never get the job done. We're saying this year there's an embarrassing lack of fundamentals, despite the fact that he's had 2 spring camps and 2 fall camps. Will Shipley has been here. This is his 3rd year. He should understand how to get the ball high and tight, just like that coach on Hard Knocks with the Cowboys said years and years ago to Martellus Bennett. Protect the football, as Jimmy Johnson used to say. Wrap it up, get it in tight. You really think you're going to plow into the trenches where there's a bunch of your guys and a bunch of the other guys, and nobody's going to try to take a swipe at that ball? If you still believe that by now, you've got a big problem that you have to work on, and it's a fundamental problem. Hope Shipley's okay. Sounds like he is after that bad hit that he took in Raleigh. Maybe some time away from the field is in order, A, physically, and 2, a chance to kind of sit back, take a deep breath, and register, hey, here, I don't want to dwell on failure, but I also have to find the lesson from it and drum it into my head. And I think that's, when you and I have talked about, hey, maybe Klubnik should sit a series, sit a possession here or there. It's not about demoting him fully, but it's about giving him that chance to get that perspective and so on and so forth. And I think we can look all over the field and find guys where, hey, there needs to be some in-game coaching, some in-game feedback, and also not to mention this team has leaned on the starters very, very heavily. Despite the offensive line's troubles, we haven't seen a lot of guys cycle in against ACC opponents, Power 5 opponents. How do you develop that talent if it's sitting on the bench watching the entire time? How do you develop your starters if there's never a chance for Thomas Austin to stand there and say, hey, you see how good that looked? That's what you're not doing. Or, hey, you see how bad that looked? That's the same thing you're doing. And this is why I need you to see it and work on the changes, to not just see it on tape in meetings during the week, but to see it in the heat of battle. Maybe is going to, again, change things a little bit. Maybe it'll fill some of those gaps that we're talking about when we, again, talk about the mood of the room, the temperature of the room.
Yeah, there's just a lot of issues right now. There's not one easy fix,
Nope.
right? And I know that you can point to the turnovers, right? And you could say, well, if we don't turn the ball over, we're 8-0. And Dabo said that today, and he's probably right. But that doesn't mean it's true. But that still doesn't mean it's fixed, right? I mean, if this team's 8-0, are we still think this is a great team? I mean, let's say take the turnovers away, and they beat Florida State close. They beat Miami close. They beat NC State close. Somehow they beat Duke. Are we still talking about them as a great team where they were? Last year, Bill, I've said this. How many times have I said this? They beat South Carolina. They're in the playoff, right? And you think Tennessee beat the brakes off of you. What would Georgia have done if you'd have played them in the playoff? So, I mean, there's a clear slide in the program. And that's okay. I mean, look, you and I have lived through some bad Clemson football. I remember 3-8 with Tommy West. I remember, Clemson not being able to win the division when Florida State wasn't any good, and Boston College won the division, and Wake Forest won the division. I remember those days. Now, if you're younger than us, you don't. But I remember Danny Ford having a 6-6 season. right? And then having to play Minnesota in the bowl game. I mean, I remember those years. I'm not even that worried about this one specific season, because this stuff is kind of fluky. There's been some fluky stuff, but it's fluky this year, but it's been going on for 3 years. And that's not fluky, right? I mean, even the 2020 team went to the playoffs. They couldn't run the ball other than Travis was that good that he ran behind that offensive line.
Yeah.
How many times did he get the ball and there's a guy right in his face and he has to shake and bake and then get a 6-yard gain?
Or they started pitching it to him wide.
Right. Just to give him a head start because he's so damn talented. How many times did Trevor get beat up and then get back up? Remember the Ohio State game?
Right. Both of them.
Yeah, the first one. Remember, he got the hell beat out of him in 2019 against Ohio State.
Yeah.
And I still think he was hurt the next week against LSU.
Yep.
And then the next year it was even worse. So it's not just, look, the quote unquote flukiness, that's true. There's been some fluky plays. But when it happens over and over and over for 3 years, that's not fluky. That's the program taking a step back.
Yeah.
And that has to be addressed. That's my only look. We can't know what's going to happen in December or January when the season's over. Dabo made the tough decision last year to get rid of Brandon Streeter. I think he genuinely cares about Brandon Streeter and hated having to do that.
Yeah.
But he saw that he had to do it, and he brings in Garrett Riley. Well, first off, let's let Garrett Riley run the offense he wants to run if you're going to make that change. And if he thinks he needs some different assistants to run that offense, then you got to give him that chance to do that. Yeah. Who is that? I don't know. I don't know who needs to go as an assistant coach is not my call. I have thoughts on it. I think they need some more veteran leadership in the assistant coaching staff. They don't have a lot.
Right.
But I mean, 4-4, maybe they went out and they're 8-4, maybe. But I also think that, and Barrett Carter, there's quotes coming across Twitter and everything right now that Barrett Carter said they appreciate the Dabo's taking the heat for them, but they also don't like that their coach has to take the heat for them. I don't think he set that up last night, but I think he thought, I've got to get the heat off these players. And if that means I got to rant on somebody, whoever that is, and Tyler just happened to open his mouth and teed it up for him.
Congratulations, Tyler. You're getting a lovely parting gift.
We'll send you a Clemson sweatshirt. No, I absolutely think that at some point this week he was going to rant about something. And Tyler made it easy for him.
Maybe. We'll see if Notre Dame makes it easy for him too. I have a hunch that they will. I can't believe the spread has been as low as that game. I'm not a gambling man, but as far as, I mean, I guess what you can say is, it would be almost a touchdown if it was a neutral site and more than a touchdown if Notre Dame was at home. And I guess that's how the spread works. And a lot of it depends on what money's going where, and it's going to be fluid the rest of the week. I just think Clemson's outmatched in the trenches against Notre Dame. So maybe they can get to 7-5 rather than 8-4 would be my outlook. I don't think you can look at it that way though. Like you and I talked about last week, and y'all go ahead and watch that previous episode. And Daniel, I know you got to get going. This is about building for next year in the 12-team playoff and winning another ACC title next year. And I don't really want to see, like, I loved seeing Tristan Lee move to right guard. Let's see what he can be there. Let's get more of that kind of, let's look at what these guys really are kind of mentality out of that. Not maybe one particular move, but let's just see what guys are made of and what they can do. We will be back after that Notre Dame game. The episode will look again, big picture at Clemson. We'll find another aspect to take a look at. And until then, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tyler. No, I mean, I'm sorry. Go Tigers. No, I'm not on Tyler's side. I'm just kidding.